Welcome to Recovering from Religion Australia's podcast series, Unshackled. Conversations about life beyond belief, healing from religious harm, and building secular community. Recovering from Religion is a global non-profit offering hope, healing, and support to anyone impacted by religion. Some episodes include sensitive topics and mild language. Listener discretion advised. Views expressed are those of the speakers and not necessarily those of RFR as an organisation. We're glad you're here.
Hi, and welcome to Unshackled, the RFR Australia and New Zealand podcast. I'm Christopher Karvountzis.
And I'm Joe Browne. Today we're going to talk about queer identity and the politics of inclusion.
Ooh, that sounds like a pretty complicated one.
It could be.
Look forward to it. So, let's launch straight in. Joe, how do you personally define your queer identity, and when did you first start understanding what it might mean to be queer?
It's only been a couple of years, really, since I've actually started identifying as queer. I've always shied away from that term. It's always been a slur used towards me, but now it's more commonplace. So I don't use it particularly often, but I do identify with it.
Yeah, it's certainly come more into common parlance. What does it really mean? What are the words, the definition? What do these mean?
For me personally?
Yeah, for you.
Well, for me, it's, busting out of the box everybody tried to put me in and taking those boxes and saying, I'm not going to fit in this box and I'm going to burn the shit out of it. I don't fit your standards. Piss off. I don't want to deal with you.
And what sort of box, for want of a better term, were you being kept in? What can you give us an idea of that?
Well, I'm trans, but more importantly, I think, was everybody just wanted me to be male, even though biologically I'm a little bit of both. So when that was forced on me and I had to conform to it, it took away my sense of self, I guess, would be the best way to say that.
Yeah, that sounds like that would have been really tough.
Like I pushed back and I was eventually put into a foster care system, and then I had to endure forced testosterone therapy as well as conversion therapy for 3 years.
That's a lot.
3 years I went through conversion therapy once a month. That scrambles your noodle a little bit.
I'm so sorry to hear that, Joe. That's absolutely awful.
It gets worse, because then I just decided, what else can go wrong? I'm going to join a Pentecostal church and be a happy, clappy Christian.
What could possibly go wrong?
No, let's drop out of university and pursue a career as a roofer and marry the woman that they pair me with. I can't believe the shit I did just to deny who I was, which is an intersex trans woman who's unapologetically queer and don't give a shit what anybody else thinks. But that's not how my life was in the early parts of my tens, my teens, my 20s, even my 30s, Yeah. Even after leaving the church, I struggled with it because, like I said, they scrambled my noodles. So, lobotomy probably would have been better to deal with, I think, than all the shit that I had to go through. So, and, I'm not special. I mean, lots of people go through traumas. My trauma doesn't invalidate yours or the other person down the road who suffered at the hands of, theistic cults. And what's scary is that as a trans woman now, the secular community, the atheist community, seems to be split. Like, people who used to be on our side against one thing suddenly are in opposition of my very existence.
Understood. But it really sounds like you've obviously there was a lot of a lot of fight and a lot of trauma, particularly in the early years, but it seems like you've really embraced the identity that you have now and that you present. Would that be true?
That would very much be true. This genie was let out of the bottle, and she's not going back.
I think that's fair. Well, we're glad that it's not going back.
I am glad it's not going back because life's hard. When you got to try to make everybody happy, the only person who's not going to be happy is you. And, God damn it, I want to be happy. So, Chris, what about your career? And start embracing it.
Oh, about 10 minutes before we started this recording. No. In some ways, yeah, certainly not early on. So I was raised in a high control group or a cult, and very high control group thought that being gay was absolutely wrong. It was a sin. I was something shameful and deplorable. So for me, it took a long time post cult to start even admitting that I had an identity other than what the cult told me I was and I had. And then, of course, still I had issues around internalized homophobia. So probably 4 or 5 years at least for me to come to terms with my identity, and a lot of counseling and therapy. And I would slowly start to develop a sense of my own self, my identity, how I wanted to present. And it's like most things in life, we can decide what we want to be, how we want to present ourselves in this world. And I found that pretty free. You don't have to conform to a mold, whether that's what you grew up with, were indoctrinated with, what society says that you perhaps need to be. You can really take parts from what you think is right and appropriate for you. So I guess that's how the process was for me. It took a lot of years to come to that position and to, I guess, be the human being that you're talking with now.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad to have you here as part of the community, because who else is going to do this podcast with me?
Well, there is that. Well, and there's probably lots of people that we can talk to and you can talk to. So, Joe, I know a couple of months ago when we first started talking about doing this podcast and telling some more in-depth stories, you had a recent experience, or had at that time, assisting RFR International with an event where RFR was excluded. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and how the fallout actually had a personal impact for you?
Oh, well, I grew up in Canada, and the event was in St. John's, Newfoundland. With all my trauma happening in Canada, so it kind of stung a little bit that this was still kind of going on. Strange, because it was a pride event, and if anybody would, be welcoming, you would think it would be the LGBT community in Canada, right?
Yeah.
So that one left a mark. At first, we submitted an application to table the Pride in the Park event.
Okay.
So we would set up a table with our signs, and people could come up and talk to us and ask who we are, what we're about, this and the other thing. And that was all approved. And then just over a week before the event was starting, they turned around and said, you can't come.
Okay. What had changed?
Well, they weren't clear. They wouldn't say. We had to press them on the subject. It was, the excuses shifted. Suddenly we weren't local enough. Then they were worried that we might tokenize the LGBT community for our own benefits. And then they finally told us that some queer faith-based groups found our presence too uncomfortable.
Oddly.
I personally feel that was the real underlying reason. Queer faith-based groups, which is kind of an oxymoron, really, but it found our presence. I mean, none of those three things make any sense. If they looked us up, We don't proselytize. We don't get in your face. We don't go on a anti-religion bashing. It's for people to come to us. We don't go knocking on your doors, right? We're not Mormons. We're not Jehovah's Witnesses. You come to us, and if you need help, we'll try to help you. Set you up with a community, a group, whatever. But if we go back to their one excuse was, oh, we weren't local enough. It's like, well, how do we become local, like have a local chapter in St. John's, if we don't go there and introduce ourselves and try to become a local chapter? I mean, the group that from RFR that was actually trying to table the event, we're from Newfoundland.
Huh.
They just weren't from St. John's. It's like,
yeah.
I don't know. At the end of the day, they said, "Yeah, you know what? Sure, you can come."
I know that it did change in the end, but what actually happened to change it? I know that it got some coverage in the press, and I know that you wrote about it. What actually happened? Take me through it.
Well, Hammett Mehta of the Friendly Atheist, he wrote a big piece about it.
Yeah, I saw that. That was pretty impressive.
Then Seth Andrews covered it as well. He interviewed one of our RFR organizers for the event. And then, I don't know, I wrote a little story that seemed to get some attention, from Dr. Darrell Ray and a few others. And suddenly we're in the event.
And it turned out well in the end.
They absolutely were thrilled to have us there at the end of it.
That's fantastic.
So
the right result was had.
Yes, and I'm glad we didn't have to set up outside the event with a table with a sign that says, "Come talk to us. We're not welcoming."
Yeah, the irony, huh?
Right.
Well, I'm glad the right result was achieved, and it was through diplomacy and a little bit of activism.
Well, yes, it was very much activism because the diplomacy side of things weren't actually working. It had to have been public pressure, right?
But it worked, and we were there.
I mean, to say that we would tokenize the LGBT community, I mean, what? I don't know what the actual statistics, but just within the organization alone, how many of us are LGBT identifying? Probably.
I think there's a good chunk, maybe 30%.
Yeah, at least a third, I think. So yeah, it all worked out in the end, and
okay. Well, I'm just glad that it went ahead with some RFR presence in it.
Yeah, I just I'm happy that we ended up, no matter how we got there with it, we got there.
Yeah, agreed.
So, Chris, what shaped your understanding of inclusion?
Oh, so much, both words and actions of others. And yeah, I think some of my later experiences after having left the cult. So for me, in my background, I was always taught that everyone and everything outside the cult was just an absolutely horrible place. People were out to get you if they weren't part of the cult. But really through experience, I learned that that was not the case. People were, not that people are universally all 100% amazing, but generally people are out there that you see, that you meet, they'll be there to help you when things aren't going right, whether that's work colleagues, even people that you meet in your day-to-day life. So for me, I really experienced that, particularly from my work colleagues who, when they saw that I was really struggling with my mental health, which saw my productivity go down, which saw me withdraw, they really stepped up and came to my rescue in many regards, helped me build a community, friendships, include me in events and activities in the workplace and also outside of it as well. And that was a pretty formative experience for me. After that, I then went to work in state government. One of the areas that I ended up leading was a whole raft of policy areas, from youth to carers through to LGBTQA policy for the state. So that was really, I guess, an experience that shaped my views of inclusion as well, because I got to see many things from many grassroots groups and started to understand some of the struggles people face, from the struggles that an older trans person might have in an aged care setting, getting appropriate treatment, care, socialisation, finding doctors and medical practitioners who can support their medication requirements, the therapies they may need, the particular issues faced by young people, particularly around mental health challenges with coping with family, school, work pressures around their identities at an age where they were just so young. So those type of activities, those types of experiences really shaped my thoughts on inclusion. And I think it just really probably led me to have probably a more open, inquisitive, and also gentler approach to inclusion. There's certainly no one-size-fits-all solution here. It's really about meeting people where they are at the time, and having that openness to engage in a dialogue and understand. It's really empathy. It's the empathy piece that really shaped my understanding, I think, of inclusion and what it can and should look like.
Empathy is a very important
Oh, yeah.
part of everything that we as humans do.
Well, now that you've asked me something, I want to take it a little bit further, Joe. So how do we as individuals contribute to making spaces more inclusive for others? What role does societal structures and politics play here? It's a pretty big question, but I think you're up to it.
And let's take a step back and
Yeah.
look at our own biases, and
Mm-hmm.
let's notice who's missing and make sure our language opens doors instead of closing them, like at the Pride event. That's the minimum standard. But let's be honest, inclusion isn't just about smiling more in the workplace or sticking a rainbow on your email signatures. I mean, the barriers, structural systems, and laws still hand out free passes to discrimination, usually wrapped in religious freedom, right? That's not inclusion. State-sanctioned exclusion, really. So let's use our empathy at how we would want to be treated, and if we were in that position, and let's expand it to other people. Chris, do you think progress we celebrate is real, or is it just surface level optics while politicians push things like trans lives is a cult, that kind of stuff? Like, is it just, are we really winning, or what do you think?
I think on the whole, we're winning, but sometimes it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. There is a lot of tokenism, but also I think just it can also bring a level of visibility. So I think that's a good thing. We need to make sure that we don't leave it firstly at tokenism, or we actually make the words mean something through actions, whether that's more inclusive programs, health services, and more inclusive services, public services generally. Yeah, I think we definitely need to applaud progress. Yeah, I think there certainly are forces that keep full inclusion out of reach at times. So I think we can have some harmful ideologies, like you just mentioned, like labelling trans lives a cult, which they're not. But I think on the whole, we're heading in the right direction. I'm certainly hopeful, but I'm a fairly optimistic person as well. Does that kind of answer it?
Yeah, it does, actually. It does.
Joe, I was just thinking about inclusion, and back to your last comments. Are there any biases that you hold that might unconsciously exclude others?
Yeah, I struggle with non-binary identity. And that's I'm not invalidating them. I struggle with the idea
So it's a personal unfamiliarity?
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Thank you, because I was like trying not to dig a deep hole for myself. But yeah, it's just it's something I work at. It's something I'm aware of, and I do try to do better. And I make mistakes. I stumble, and I can only try to not make the same mistakes.
I think that's a really good point. And the way that you just struggled then articulating it, I think it's really important that we at least have those conversations. And you've really shown that you're able to and have the capacity and willingness to interrogate your own feelings. And like you just said, it comes from a place where you don't necessarily have any, I don't know the word, what did we say, personal awareness or familiarity with the subject. So it's a good opportunity for some self-reflection and some self-education too, I guess.
Exactly. And you know what? I was just thinking it too, like, I remember when I was, I guess some people would have called me self-hating transphobe, because for so long I was told I was a mistake and I was of the devil and whatever else, when I was trying to keep Johanna boxed up and put away in the closet, John was very much anti-trans, at least
Yeah.
outward. It took me a long time, even after I left the faith, to accept myself. And yeah, so, sometimes still I see some trans activists and I'm just like, shut up, you're not helping.
I guess it's all part of the community more broadly, but it's all part of inclusion. Can I ask? You've mentioned a couple of specific examples there, but how can we, the royal we, amplify stories of inclusion and acceptance within our communities? What are some practical ways we can do it?
Well, we could listen and only listen. Don't give advice. Just let people tell their story and
That,
validate their story.
that's a good one. I guess I have a story in that regard. That there's a big difference in listening to understand and listening to respond. The cult that I grew up in, we would always be trained to listen to people, but so we could counteract with our own narrative rather than what you and I guess, try to do now, which is listen to understand and empathize with the person that we're having an actual conversation with. Does that
Yeah,
resonate for you?
yeah, absolutely. Because when I was struggling emotionally and through isolation, it was the people who would listen to me and show me kindness and caring that made more difference than anything anybody else could do for me. Because nobody's ever listened to me. No one's ever actually heard me before in my previous life
Mhm.
as a believer or as a teen struggling with my identity. Nobody cared. They just wanted to fix me.
And what happens when we're not listened to in those circumstances, when those people didn't want to listen to understand, when they wanted to fix you, as they call it? What did that do for you or to you?
Well, for me,
Yeah,
it just made me feel broken. Like I'm the problem,
yeah, that's not nice.
right? Like
It's not right.
it made me feel worthless as a person. And I know that there are a lot of other people who feel that way, who aren't even, they might not even be trans or gay or lesbian or bi. They whatever they went through in their deconversion, there are members of their community that treat them the same way as if they were trans or gay or, just because they no longer believe anymore,
Mm.
you know, especially people coming from high control group religion.
Yeah. Yeah, I can certainly empathize and sympathize with that. Certainly something I have experience with.
Well,
Sure.
with my work um, as vice president with Faithless Hijabi and helping ex-Muslims, with their mental health and escaping family violence, like real violence, like, honor
Mm.
crimes. And it's not just Middle Eastern countries.
No.
It's happened here in Australia. It's
Yeah,
happened in the UK and the US,
certainly.
and it's not just Islam. Islam's probably the worst, but, we see that with reformers, ex-Mormons, and, the JWS. So, yeah.
So, Joe, just as we're wrapping this up, we've talked about the political context and activism, but how can our awareness of these politics enhance our own confidence in activism and for our listeners as well? What does that mean?
Awareness of the politics isn't just abstract theory, it's fuel. But when you understand how the language laws and the gatekeeping are weaponized, you stop mistaking token gestures for real progress. And that awareness builds confidence because you can see
Mm.
the game for what it is, and you can stop blaming yourself for the rigid rules. So for me, it
Mhm.
sharpens my activism. It reminds me that the fight isn't just about personal healing. It's about dismantling the structures that profit from my silence. So, whether it's an ideology or a pride board or permissions or politicians, trying to drag transgender ideology to occult inquiry, um, you know, it the confidence comes from knowing that they're working this hard to shut us out. It's because our voices are powerful, and activism means using that power loudly, unapologetically, and you know me, fairly unapologetically,
And very loud.
and on my terms, right?
Yeah.
So that's how, for me, I see it. Do you have anything to add?
I would just like to add that I certainly agree with a lot of what you've just said. And really, I wouldn't encourage people to doubt or speak out if they feel unsafe, but certainly if they have the time, the space, the resources where they're in a position to help others and to speak up on behalf of others, please take that opportunity, get involved, step up. It really does make a difference. Your voice does count. Absolutely.
And if they have the time, they can always become a RFR volunteer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we need people to answer the phones. We need, moderators. We need video editors. We need group hosts, and there's lots of things people can volunteer to do. It doesn't always mean they need to be public facing. They could be
No.
helping us in the background, so we can do what we're doing without having to do that other stuff that takes us away
Yeah.
from public facing activism.
So next time, Joe, what are we going to discuss? Maybe next week.
Next week, we focus on religious trauma.
It sounds like it's a good place to take up next week, because we know that leaving a cult or questioning our faith is really just the beginning. And like you've often said, that the real victory is actually reclaiming your own life.
That's right.
So I just want to thank everyone for joining us. And for more resources, please visit our website or connect via our support groups or online chat. Links in the description below. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for Unshackled from Recovering from Religion Australia. If you're looking for support, visit recoveringfromreligion.au. There you'll find a resources library on deconversion, religious trauma and more, our blog, other podcasts, and RFRX talks, a 24/7 helpline by phone or live chat with trained volunteers, support groups online and in person in some locations, and the Secular Therapy Project, vetted secular clinicians. You're not alone. Be excellent to each other.